Good morning, class. I am Richard G. Desian. Today we were going to talk about the history of the Earth and the evolution of life. We'll be exploring the method of determining the age of the Earth, radiation measurement, stratigraphic superposition, and the fossil record. The Earth is approximately 4.6 billion years old. But how do we know this? Let's start with the methods of determining the age of the Earth. There are several methods to determine the age of the Earth, including radiation measurement, stratigraphic superposition, and the fossil record. First is radiation measurement. Radioactive decay elements such as uranium. These methods involve measuring the decay rate of radioactive elements, such as uranium. This means involves measuring the decay rate of radioactive elements. Next is stratigraphic superposition. Layers of the rocks containing identifiable fossils remain. These methods analyzing the layer of rocks and the fossils they contain to determine the age of the Earth. This means involve analyzing the layer of the rock and the fossil contains. The law superposition states that the oldest rock layer is at the bottom and the youngest is at the top. Next is the fossil record. Record of the occurrence and evolution of living organisms through geological time as inferred from fossils. Fossils provide evidence of the history of life on Earth and allow us to reconstruct the evolutionary relationships between different organisms. Next, here are the examples of law of superposition. Next, evolutions or evolution. Evolution is the change in heritable characteristic of biological population over successive generations. These characteristics are the expressions of genes which are passed on from parents to offspring during reproduction. Variation tends to exist within any given population as a result of genetic mutation and recombination. Next. So, this picture is example of evolution or the story of life. The story of life on Earth begins with the formation of the Earth approximately 4.6 billion years ago. The early atmosphere contained water vapor, ammonia, and hydrogen gas, but no oxygen. The first life forms emerged around 3.5 billion years ago and were likely single-cell organisms that obtained their energy from organic molecules. Over time, these early life forms evolved into more complex organisms, including photosynthetic prokaryotes, aerobic prokaryotes, and eventually multicellular organisms. Next, biogenesis. Living things come only from other things living. In other words, biogenesis living organism can only arise from other living organisms and not from non-living matters. So here are the example of biogenesis. These two pictures. History of the Earth. Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago. Atmosphere contained water vapor, ammonia, methane, and hydrogen gas. And also, it is no have oxygen. early Earth, lightning converted the toxic gas into amino acids, simple sugar, fatty acids, and nucleotides. This was proven by Miller and Urey. Next, so where did life come from? First, small organic molecules. Experiment by Miller and Urey. Recreated condition of early Earth. Within a week, the electricity turned the gases into amino acid. Primordial soap. This is what we call the early ocean, rich with organic compounds. In other words, scientists Miller and Urey created a lab experiment that mimic the early Earth's conditions. They found that simple organic molecules like amino acid form from gases. So here are the example of small organic molecules. Next, protocells. Cells-like structure, the origin of the cell membrane, and last is organic molecules inside. In other words, they didn't have a nucleus, but they had a cell membrane. So this picture is example of protocells. Micelles, this is my cell. Liposome, big, and phospholipid bilayer. That is example of protocells. Next, prokaryotes. First biotic organisms evolved 3.5 billion years ago, and they were anaerobic heterotrophs that got their energy from organic molecules. The first living organism, which were single cells and didn't have oxygen, they got energy from organic molecules. And this is the example of prokaryotes. Next, photosynthetic prokaryotes. They were the first organism to perform photosynthesis and evolved 2.2 billion years ago. Also, they started to convert the CO2 into oxygen. In other words, photosynthetic prokaryotes, this organism could make food from sunlight, water, and releasing oxygen. And here are the example of photosynthetic prokaryotes. Next, fifth, aerobic prokaryotes. Evolved with the presence of oxygens or oxygen. That means aerobic prokaryotes as oxygen level increase. These organisms evolved to use oxygen for energy. So these two pictures are example of aerobic prokaryotes. Next is eukaryotes. Single-cell organism with a nucleus. Both evolved around 2 billion years ago. Single-cell organism with a nucleus evolved around 2 billion ago. Some eukaryotes engulfed smaller prokaryotes which became organelles like mitochondria and chloroplasts. Next, the Indus symbiont theory. This is the example of the endosymbiosis theory by Campbell 1996. Let's define the endosymbiont theory. It is the smaller prokaryotes were engulfed by larger cells and began to live life together. They eventually evolved into organelles, chloroplasts, mitochondria. Next is multi-cell organism. This did not evolve until 600 million years ago. Specialized cells form tissue and organs, creating the multi-cell organism. Around 600 million years ago, specialized cells form tissue and organs, creating multicellular organisms like plants and animals. Next, origin of life timeline. 4.6 billion years ago, Earth formed. 3.8 billion years ago, ocean formed. 3.5 billion years ago, first prokaryotes. 2.2 billion years ago, oxygen producers. 2 billion years ago, eukaryotic organisms. 600 million years ago, multi-celled organism. Next, era timeline. So, Precambrian era, 3.5 billion years ago, it is a single-cell organism. And Paleozoic era, 540 million years ago. Invertebrates, fish, reptiles, conifers. Mesozoic era, 245 million years ago. Involved are dinosaurs, mammals, flowering plants, and birds. Cenozoic era, 66 million years ago. Around placental mammals, large mammals, and humans. Next, here are the geologic time scale. Geologic time scale 650 million years ago to the present. Here are the era or million of years ago, and this is a period, and last is events. This is an example of evolution of life on Earth. Next, so that's all for today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of Earth and the evolution of life. Thank you, everyone.